It is interesting that this skilled general was in charge of preparing war briefings for Vladimir Putin. Do you see this as a personal humiliation for Putin as this general was killed in Moscow?
Well, the biggest humiliation for Vladimir Putin is that 11 years after he started this war, he's still, with every advantage, he still only controls about 18% of Ukraine, and there are no prospects, zero prospect that Russia is going to be able to defeat Ukraine. That's the most humiliating thing for him. The second thing that obviously will be humiliating is the fact that senior Russian officers can be killed by this sort of attack in Moscow or near Moscow, that Ukraine has that kind of reach. And so I think, how does he explain to his own population that he can't protect them?
And also it seems like Russian security services are unable to protect even their own generals and officers. In Moscow, as we know, Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service and Security Service of Ukraine have briefed President Zelensky on eliminating individuals from Russia's top command. And President Zelensky said, quote, "Justice inevitably comes. Thank you for your work," referring to Ukraine security services. Do you feel that this assassination campaign deep inside Russia reveals also fragility and weaknesses of Russia's security system?
Well, yes, of course. If somebody is able to know where this general, what his travel pattern is, where he'll be, who he is, to be able to target him, that obviously reveals vulnerabilities. But I don't know. I don't think of these as assassinations as they are. I mean, these are soldiers, enemy soldiers, combatants, and I think that they are liable to become casualties. But I think what we want is them looking over their shoulder and losing trust in each other, because they'll be wondering where is this information coming from? How have they been penetrated? So this is an important part of creating disruption on the enemy side.
And also it could be influential from the psychological point of view for Russian officers.
Yeah, look, in the U.S., we used to have this thing, whenever there was a missing child, you would put the picture on a milk carton so that everybody would see this little girl or this boy or somebody was missing, so that people could be on the lookout. I would use the same thing for Russian officers in the chain of command that are anywhere from the top down to the level of launching missile strikes that kill innocent Ukrainians. I would have their picture published so that everybody knows, so that that officer knows, that his family knows, and his friends know that Ukrainians know who they are. Otherwise, these people, they don't feel any sense of accountability for what they're doing, committing war crimes. I'm not talking about officers who are involved in combat against Ukrainian forces. This is war. But the murder of innocent people, there's got to be a way to put pressure on Russia to hold them accountable, and to for these officers to know that their name is on a list, and that when this is all over, eventually they will be held accountable, just as Nazi war criminals were held accountable after the Second World War.
Also, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has declared so-called three-day ceasefire from May 8 to May 11. This decision was based on humanitarian consideration, according to Kremlin. How do you see the main reasons behind this Putin's so-called three-day ceasefire after previous 30 hours ceasefire?
Yeah, well, I think there's probably three things. Number one, he's trying to change the narrative because he could see that even President Trump was beginning to become more, put more pressure on the Russian side. So I think part of it's trying to change the narrative there. The second thing, of course, is that nobody on the planet believes that Russia would actually live up to any ceasefire. I mean, it's not likely unless they were forced to. And then the third thing, the real reason I believe, is because they don't want Ukrainian drones landing on Red Square during their Victory Day celebration activities. I think that's the real reason they're hoping for a ceasefire during that period. I thought your prime minister or your foreign minister's response was correct when he said, "Why not 30 days? Why 3 days? And what are we waiting for? Why not start it right now?" And because he knows that this is a Russian information operation.
At the same time, according to Financial Times, Russian dictator Putin told Steve Witkoff that he was ready to halt invasion of Ukraine and the current front lines on the ground. What is your assessment of this possibility of halting the war and negotiations which are in progress right now?
Well, I don't. First of all, I would trust President Zelensky and his team to know what is best for Ukraine and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And I think what a ridiculous offer, and the fact that Mr. Witkoff even repeated it is also not very good. That the big concession from Russia was that they would not take over all of Ukraine. I mean, what kind of a concession is that? So I think the Ukrainian government knows that Ukraine's soldiers are winning on the battlefield, on the ground. They stopped Russia, even without adequate help from the West. Russia cannot defeat Ukraine, and so I think I think Ukraine is in a position you can make demands about your sovereignty, about future security, and. But this is up to the Ukrainian government and the people. How much are they willing to continue doing this? But I think it's hard to imagine an outcome with Russia retaining big chunks of Ukraine, and that just be it. That there wouldn't be further actions.
And also, there was an interesting meeting in Vatican between US President Donald Trump and President Zelensky. After this meeting, Donald Trump for the first time questioned Putin's willingness to end the war, threatening another sanctions against Russia. Quote, "It makes me think that maybe Putin doesn't want to stop the war, he is just taping me along and has to deal with differently banking sanctions." Do you have any kind of hope that this meeting in Vatican could change Trump's stance on Putin, Trump's policy on that?
Well, certainly President Zelensky deserves credit for his incredible patience and his persistence, the willingness to sit down and keep trying to explain to this American president what the facts of what's really going on. So, that was a great picture, the two of them sitting there. It was interesting. There were memes of people saying, "Here's the American president meeting with the leader of the free world, President Zelensky." I mean, it really is an amazing turn of how people perceive these leaders. I would trust whatever President Zelensky said, but I think if this meeting between the two of them was President Trump listening to President Zelensky and finally understanding what was going on, if he then goes and does something and puts real pressure on Russia, then I'll be impressed. But I haven't seen any change yet in the American approach towards Russia. I haven't heard a statement telling Vladimir Putin that if you don't accept this 30 days unconditional ceasefire, unconditional, then I am going to give Ukraine everything that they need without restriction. I am going to add more sanctions, and I am going to take steps that will crush Russia's oil and gas industry. That's real leverage. And the president could do all those things if he was serious. But if he doesn't do any of that, then I will not be very hopeful after this conversation at the Vatican, which is unfortunate. And it's interesting. I think the president, your president, would have taken some encouragement from the fact that every other leader that was there was supporting him, applauded him, and so Europe, while Europe, it's going to take them a while to get fully organized and to do what they should be doing. There's no doubt that European countries have the capability and the resources and the industry that dwarfs Russia, and that they could really do tangible things that would help make a difference for Ukraine.
Let's cover also this offer from the U.S. Administration from Steve Witkoff. The Trump's administration proposed to recognize Crimea as a Russian territory de jure and de facto recognize Russian control over occupied territories of Ukraine. If the United States government recognizes Crimea as a Russian territory, what would this mean from a political and military point of view? What kind of strategic leverage Russia would have in case of such recognition?
Well, number one, it would be a catastrophe for American credibility. I mean, that because nobody else is going to recognize that. I mean, the EU, European countries have already said, no way, we would not recognize that. So American credibility would be in the trash after something like that. Number two, the Chinese will take note. The Chinese will see that, oh, okay, so the U.S. is flexible on territory as they continue to take parts of the Philippines or Taiwan or other of these disputed islands and coral reefs out in the South China Sea, for example. So this would not be useful in our deterrence efforts against China. And then finally, it would be wrong. I mean, why in the world would the United States go along and say, well, come on, Russia already occupies it and they speak Russian there, and these ridiculous reasons for doing this, which reveals that this administration completely fails to understand what this war is about, the history, the geography, why Ukraine is fighting. So I hope Ukraine does not accept that. Ukraine is not obligated to accept anything that the Russians and the Americans might work out, nor are other European countries. I think for sure Turkey is not going to accept this, and that's important as well. So I hope that Ukraine makes it very clear that you do not recognize this. And then finally, this will have a negative impact on reconstruction because the big investment companies that would bring enormous amounts of money to help rebuild Ukraine, if they see that Russia occupies Crimea with a so-called American recognition of it, then I think they will be reluctant to invest in reconstruction because they will see that these are the conditions for Russia resuming the conflict after whatever sort of resolution there is. So I don't see anything good in it.
Also, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance threatens to abandon Ukraine ceasefire talks if there would be any kind of progress. If the U.S. abandoning ceasefire talks, would this be worst case or the best case scenario for Ukraine?
Well, first of all, part of the problem on the U.S. side is that you've got 5 different people talking about what the plan is. Secretary Rubio, Mr. Witkoff, General Kellogg, Vice President Vance, the president himself, and none of them seem to be in harmony or synchronized in what they're doing. So, whatever the vice president says, it reflects what a part of the administration believes or wants. But I don't know. I'm not confident that he speaks with any authority for the president or the rest of them. It's just it reflects the disorganization and I think the incompetence of their approach. To be honest, unless it looks like the U.S. was getting ready to really provide real support to Ukraine and put real pressure on Russia, then the U.S. walking away from this is not necessarily the worst case, except for us. It would be worst case for us, and it would be really damage any credibility the administration has by doing that. But from Ukraine, the perspective of Ukraine or Europe, um, I don't know that that's the worst case based on what the administration is doing so far. For the Russians, it would not be good because without the U.S. there, I mean, the Europeans are not confused about who the bad guy is. So uh, that's kind of how I assess it right now.
And do you feel that Europe now is ready to take a lead in this process of supporting Ukraine if US abandons negotiations, if the United States abandons support for Ukraine?
Well, this is where we're going to find out. Can Europe meet the moment? I hear a lot of positive language that comes out of UK and France and Brussels. We will finally have a German government here, I think, in about 2 weeks. And if Mr. Merz is the Bundeskanzler, as we all expect, he's demonstrated clearly that he is on the side of Ukraine. And so that could be a positive change to help get things going. I think, Poland, I'd like to see Poland be more forward leaning in this, but of course they have a presidential election here in a couple of weeks. And so that's probably why they don't want this to become a presidential issue, perhaps, I don't know. But, Europe has the capability. The only thing that Europe lacks is self-confidence.
Let's cover also the coalition of the willing. The Telegraph reported that the US has privately offered to provide logistical support for this mission and also intelligence to help European troops during their mission in case of a ceasefire deal. Would this be enough for European troops to fully conduct this mission in Ukraine in case of logistical and intelligence support from the United States?
Well, first of all, if this is accurate, why is it a secret? I mean, why would we not say, hell yes, we're going to help? Because this is so important. Yes, we're going to be a part of it. So I don't know how. I'm not confident in that report. I hope it's true, but if it is true, why is it a secret? As to whether it's enough, we need to see what the mission is. We need to hear whoever's going to be in charge of this. What's the chain of command? What is the mission? What are the rules of engagement? The purpose of this would be a force that could deter Russia from violating the ceasefire. I mean, that's what it's about. And so I couldn't say whatever the U.S. is providing, if that's enough, because we don't know the bigger picture. Certainly, obviously, it would help logistics and intelligence. But I think, if that's what it takes for Europe to regain the self-confidence it needs, then obviously I'm all for it.
Let's cover our final topic, another leak from the Signal group chat regarding Pete Hacket. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hacket sent sensitive information about strikes in Yemen to another Signal group chat that included his wife and brother and personal attorney. What is your reaction to this? And also we have heard another report that Hacket used for this chat group a public internet connection violating Pentagon security protocols.
Yeah, well, this obviously reveals the lack of competence and professionalism there at the top of the Pentagon. This is embarrassing, and it's going to cause some of our allies to be very reluctant to share intelligence if they know that it could be, in a Signal chat group. And the arrogance of the Secretary of Defense is also very disturbing. And you can be sure that amongst the professionals, the military, as well as the professional civilians who work inside the Department of Defense, it's embarrassing, it's frustrating, it's worrying, and this kind of erodes trust. And, trust is such an important component of any military. And this does nothing to make people confident in their leadership. And, for me, one of the most important traits of a good leader was a willingness to accept responsibility, to own it. If there's a problem, say, I screwed up or my team screwed up, we're going to fix it. Instead, all he does is attack the media and deny it when the whole world knows it's true. And that doesn't give me hope that they're going to learn from this.
And don't you think that even many more Pentagon officials are becoming frustrated and don't support Pete Hacket in this office, because it seems like people from the Pentagon, they are leaking this information to media about these signal chat groups?
Yeah, well, of course, these are his own guys, the ones he brought in. That's the problem. When you talk about wanting to be disruptive and get rid of all the old stuff, that means you get rid of all the old professionals that have been there for a long time and know how to do these things. And so I think, again, he's not the right person for the job. And all the Republican senators who voted to confirm him, knowing that he was not qualified, they deserve the scorn, and they own responsibility for this as well.
Thank you, General Hodges, for your time and for your support for Ukraine, and glory to Ukraine.
Heroam Slava. Thank you, Daniel.